Tell me about the Geth. Tell me about the Reapers. Tell me about Saren. Tell me about Earth. Tell me about Facebook. Tell me about Nutella. Tell me about the Nene. Tell me why Felicia left. Tell me about David's private life. Hey everyone, David here, back again with another video game review, and this time it is for a game that I've been meaning to play for the longest time because I am so sick of watching some of WatchMojo's top 10 video game related videos, always mentioning this particular video game franchise and not knowing what the hell they are talking about, because every time it comes up, I've always been wanting to play these games, but because they would sometimes delve into some spoiler territory, I would either have to skip ahead or mute the video. It is so annoying. So here I am to finally indulge myself into that first of that franchise that is so beloved by so many people and talked about from left and right, and I just can't take it anymore. This is Mass Effect. And in Mass Effect, Commander Shepard is trying to thwart the evil plans of the villainous Saren that involves unleashing a ancient race of aliens named Reapers upon the galaxy that will wipe out all life, not just human life, but any kind of organic life whatsoever. And because it's a video game and you're playing as Shepard, it is up to you as him as well as his squad to stop him. Now, what I found kind of interesting about the game is that after finishing it, I could really not put my finger on what I disliked about the story for this game. I actually liked the story quite a bit. I found it very interesting, very neat. It had a good sense of pacing. I never felt like it dragged at any point. It was filled with some interesting characters, and I liked the... I don't want to say the twists and turns because there's no big revelation or twist except for minor ones, a few towards the end that were interesting, but they never caught me off guard like, oh my god, I did not see that coming. But there's certain objectives, there's certain things that are revealed to be a bit more than what you initially thought that they were going to be, and I found them to be rather enjoyable, and again, the key word is interesting. But for me, when it came to the writing, it wasn't so much the story that captivated me, but more so the actual universe, the mythology, the cultures, the species, the politics, everything that they actually created for this game outside of the actual narrative for the story. You got this plethora of background to these characters, to their races, to their species, to the way they talk to one another, to their environment, to the way their politics actually work within their society. And I mean, I'll admit, there's this section in the game that's called the Codex that gives you all this information for you to read. But to me personally, I found it more engaging to actually interact with some of these characters and have them tell me what it was about this universe that makes it so unique and so engrossing. And I found that background of this universe to be much more enticing than the actual story. But like I said, there was nothing necessarily wrong with the story because I can barely think of anything that I didn't really like about it or can consider it a con amongst the pros that was the story as well as this background, because everything about the species of races and everything and all the information, all the knowledge behind it was very fascinating to me. And what really helps sell that universe is the way it looks, because the design for some of these characters, mainly the aliens, is really, really great. What I appreciated about it is the fact that they were able to take some rather traditional designs for aliens from previous iterations that we've known aliens to look like the traditional slanted eyes, big head, that kind of thing, and then put their own spin on it. The closest resemblance to that type of alien is this race called the Salarians in this game that kind of have an inspiration to that kind of design where they have the big eyes and they have this, I don't want to say circular oval head, that like a slanted head with the slanted eyes and that kind of thing, but it slightly resembles that, and you can clearly tell that that's the inspiration that they were going with, while at the same time trying to make it their own and make it seem so that these environments and the way this technology works and the way everything works with one another. Like, it feels and looks believable, and they really sell it with the design of these characters as well as the voice work, especially again for the aliens, really sells it. I feel like they were taking their time to try to make every race feel and look and sound unique. Some aliens have this really slim layer over their voice that sounds that's very easy to distinguish. I don't, they don't necessarily distort the voice to make it sound all deep. I mean, they do with some alien races, like for example this guy right here. His name is Rex, and he's got that traditional alien voice that's all deep and monstrous. But then you got other characters like this guy right here, Garrus, who talks somewhat normally like a human being, except if you were to pay close attention, you hear this layer upon his voice that sounds a little weird, a little different. And I like that they were able to take a little subtle nuances like that and add them to the voices of the aliens. There's another alien race, actually the Solarians. They speak really fast, like they have this melodic rhythm to the way that they talk. I like doing that. They have their own unique style of speaking, and that really sold me that this universe was bigger than I had anticipated. Now, it's not all perfect. Some of the human characters suffer a little bit, whether it be their design, you know, they kind of look a little bit milquetoast, so to speak, as well as sound like it as well. Some of the human characters, including the central character here, Commander Shepard, whether it be male or female, there are moments where I feel like they should have emoted a little bit, especially when when they find themselves in really dire circumstances, and yet their voice sounds perfectly chill. You know, it kind of breaks the immersion a little bit. And no matter how great any game really looks in terms of its design, it's always going to have some problems on a technical level, mainly glitches, and this game is no exception, especially since BioWare was very ambitious about how big they were going to make this game in terms of the universe and the way you can explore it, and more on that later. But they were a little bit overly ambitious, and I'm trying to cut them some slack considering this game came out back in 2007, but man, there are some instances where this game just kind of breaks. I mean, it doesn't necessarily break to the point of simply just crashing on me and I have to reset my PS3, but there are moments that just make me go, what the hell was that? There was this instance where I was having a conversation with a character, and then that character just walks out of frame, but you can still hear them talking, and then you have Shepard talking to like a wall. What is going on? And other instances where there is some texture pop-in, most of the environments don't load up as quickly as the cutscene was anticipating them to be. But my biggest gripe, outside of the glitches, has to be a 1-2 punch combination of negativity that is the loading times and the automatic saving checkpoints. These two things made for some rather frustrating gameplay because, first of all, you have these rather huge gaps in between autosaves to where, thank God for the ability to actually save on your own. Granted, it's not a quick save button that would have made things a bit easier, but rather you have to go to the pause menu, hit save, select the file you want to overwrite your save on, and yada. But anyways, thank God for that functionality being there in the first place, because if it was solely relying on the autosave mechanic, oh my God, I would get so pissed off, because sometimes a whole hour would go by before it would save again. And of course, in between that hour, a lot can happen, alright? You can be facing some rather tough enemies, and then I'll die. So I would have to redo that previous like 35-45 minutes, and furthermore, because of the loading times, it would take forever. I would be right there just checking my Facebook for like a good 45 seconds before the environment that I was in would finally load up. Again, I'm trying to be a little bit understandable because of the release window of this game, but man, this would be a glorious opportunity to consider a remaster and fix those loading times as well as those saving checkpoints. But unfortunately, BioWare made it clear that that is, so at this time, not the plan. Now, being that it is from BioWare, they specialize in bringing us RPG games that are very definitive Western RPG. I mean, when it comes to the RPG genre, I feel like it's divided into two. You got the Western, which is everything pretty much from America, and of course the kings at doing that are BioWare, Bethesda. I know I'm missing some that managed to take the RPG genre and then mix it with something else like Gearbox with the Borderlands games. But mainly BioWare and Bethesda are the first to come to mind. If your developing studio starts with the letter B, you gotta make RPGs. That's the rule. And then you got Japanese RPGs, or mainly Asian RPGs, whether they be from Japan or well, it's mainly Japan. Alright, I'm not saying that they come from other places, but I'm not, I'm not saying that they can't come from those places, but mainly overseas, mainly Japan, where you got Nintendo, where you got anything Final Fantasy related. And being that BioWare strives to bring us one of the more definitive RPG experiences, Mass Effect is mainly that. Considering that it has third-person shooter mechanics, considering that they're taking the RPG system and putting it in space, and of course you're going to come across some kind of space battles or these shootouts that you're going to have to partake in. But it's at its core mainly an RPG about telling the story that you take part in and take part in some of the choices your main character has to take, and having you weigh in your opinion and your choices into the story, as well as how you continue the story and with which characters you do so. And I think it really exceeds at that. It does a good job at giving you some really substantial choices, but more so also it brings forward the classic system of being able to level up your character and assign them points and gather equipment, spend the money, and all these elements work really well. And of course, being that this is the prime focus of the game, it takes a little while for me to actually read the user interface, because at moments it does get a little cluttered with the words and everything, but the RPG mechanics here work in favor of the game, especially when you bring in side missions that really reward you with XP, with equipment, with money. And you know me, how addictive I am to side missions, and make no mistake, I did plenty of side missions. A good chunk of them, however, were rather short. I mean, most of them involve going to a planet, investigating the terrain, figuring out what went on, and some of them are done within like 5 minutes. Others have you explore a deeper complex and navigate through this level where you have to unveil something. But what made them more engaging is that besides the main story, you also got these other side missions that have little mini stories within them. And to me, that's always an RPG plus, and I'm happy to say that Mass Effect nailed it. And cruising around the iconic Normandy is always fun, not only going from planet to planet and investigating just how big this universe is, especially when you actually manage to find the local cluster and you go in and you find the solar system and you actually see Earth, the moon, the sun, Mercury, or whatever, and then you zoom out and you see all these other galaxies that have been found ever since the dawn of space exploration within the universe for this Mass Effect trilogy. And it's really engrossing to see all these different universes and being able to land on some of them. Not all of them, you know, there's some planets that you could either survey or just look up all the information and the backstory behind them. But every so often you will find a planet that you can actually land on and investigate and find old relics, or if you're currently doing a side mission, progress in that mission as well. And not just in exploring the universe through the Normandy, but also the Normandy itself. It's also a fun little place to kind of navigate through, and engage with some of the characters, talk to them, find out more about them, and who knows, you might discover something about yourself along the way. One of the signs that made me feel like this was going to be a good RPG is that at the beginning of the game, it gives you plenty of customization options beyond the physical attributes that help you try to change up the default look of Shepard to what you would like him or her to look like. Granted, it's not always going to look like you desire it. I mean, I was trying to model my version of Shepard after myself, and I ended up looking much more Asian than I thought I would be. But beyond that, you can also customize the backstory to your character that's actually mentioned at the beginning of the game, and ever so often towards that throughout that first act. But also all of those skill trees and the upgrades and what you can do with your character. It's very complex, but at the same time, it gets some time to getting used to. But once you do, you'll be able to assign points at the places that you will want your Shepard to exceed at, whether it be to be a better fighter, to be a better soldier, to be much more tactical with snipers, that kind of thing. Traditional RPG stuff, but it's done really well. And Shepard's not the only one that you can customize. Your squad members can also be leveled up, and you can also mess around with their skill trees and attributes to make them stronger. And by the end of the game, you'll have you can only assign 2 people to your team when you're going out on missions. Only 2 people can follow you at a time. And by the end of the game, you will then realize who your 2 favorite people are. I definitely knew who the 2 people were that I wanted on my team at all times after experimenting and making different combinations of all of them. I mean, trust me, I tried all of them. I tried to see who worked the best with me when it came to my approach to the game. Did I want to be stealthy? Did I want to be tactical? Did I want to talk my way out of situations or fight through them? And at the end of the game, I knew that my way of going out into a mission and who I was going out with was definitely going to be different than somebody else's version of trying to play this game. And of course, one of the biggest parts about how you approach the game is what dialogue choices you make, because these things could matter essentially. You got one side that kind of varies from top to bottom about what kind of things you want Shepard to say, and then on the other side you can investigate to find out more information about the situation you're in, or the environment that you're in, or the characters you're interacting with. And this is a really essential part of the game that I think could have made or broken the game. And fortunately, it makes the game in a much more positive note, because these dialogue choices matter, especially in certain instances towards the latter half of the game, where there's this big choice or set of choices that you have to make. And honestly, here is where it starts. These choices that you make in this first game will ultimately have an effect, no pun intended, on what's going to transpire in Mass Effect 2 and 3, and who you're going to be with in Mass Effects 2 and 3. And I'm definitely looking forward to see how that plays out. My only slight nitpick is that every so often, some of these dialogue choices didn't really matter as much as they did previously. In fact, sometimes the outcome would either be the same, or in other strange instances, I would make a dialogue choice, yet for some reason Shepard would say something that was rather different. I mean, not totally different, but quite substantially different to what it said, what was typed out here at the bottom of the dialogue circle, the little dialogue wheel. And I was just baffled just to see that Shepard said something that I did not mean, and I'm like, dude, you know, it's like an angry translator, like Key and Peele is like, dude, that's not what I wanted you to say. The only other part of the game that I felt could have been a bit better, and it's kind of strange to say considering that this makes up for half of the game, are the third-person shooter mechanics, which aren't bad. They're not bad, but because the game focused more on being an RPG, as well as building this rather expansive universe that you can navigate through in between missions, the third-person mechanics didn't feel as snappy as I would have loved for them to be. I mean, if you're gonna have me fight against enemies, I gotta in a third-person perspective and as a shooter, then I have to have certain mechanics, certain physics to work in favor of that system, in favor of that genre, or else there's going to be some rather frustrating moments that I'm not going to be able to get through unless I grind with some side missions and level up my character and make him stronger, as well as my squad members. And I did face that issue early on in the game, where I just kept doing this mission over and over because, you know, just sometimes I feel like I couldn't hit an enemy, but the enemy was able to hit me almost 95% of the time. And it wasn't only through leveling up and learning how some of these mechanics and some of these moves work, because in the third-person shooting mechanics defense, I will say that some of those mechanics, when it came to some of the strategic things that you can do in battle, worked to an extent. Like some of the things that you can do, like pull up a barrier or use your bionic weapon to be able to warp enemies and have them floating in the air so you can shoot them easier, or throw them a distance, or throw an object at them. Some of those things did work, especially when I would assign them to my squad members and have them do it while I take them out with my rifle or with my shotgun or whatever. That worked. That actually made me think, and it, again, brought that RPG feel to this mechanic. But it just needed to be a little bit snappier. It needed to work just a little bit more, and I'm hoping that they fix that come the second and third game when I play them. In the end, after beating Mass Effect, I felt about it similarly to how I felt about the first Assassin's Creed, where I liked it. I definitely liked this way more than Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed, the very first game, I thought was okay. This I generally thought was a good game, but I didn't really see all the hype behind it. But I'm pretty confident that, just like Assassin's Creed, it's going to be 2 and 3 that's going to launch me into believing that Mass Effect is this trilogy that I've been missing out on for the longest time, and it's going to have me even more hyped up for Mass Effect Andromeda when that comes out. So, being that that's the case, Mass Effect, good game, but it didn't engage me as much as I was expecting it to be, but it definitely has me looking forward to the opportunities that 2 will then take. I mean, it's already been made, so I'm not like looking forward to it in the sense like, oh, I hope they did this or that. I have the trilogy, set, and I'm definitely going to be playing it, hopefully in the near future, but in between then I'm trying to get some other games out of the way. But let's just say that Mass Effect definitely has me looking forward to playing 2 and 3. It didn't really put me off, but it's definitely a game that feels like it was a product of its time, like they were experimenting with this new IP, and hopefully they came a long way with the sequels after that. So for that, I give Mass Effect a rather high 8 out of 10. It's a solid game, it's a really good game with some great things about it, but some things that I'm really hoping they fixed in those latter 2 games. Mainly those save points and the loading times. Oh my god. They really got on my nerves. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought of Mass Effect, the original Mass Effect, before, you know, BioWare got caught up with its mythos and its space opera saga, as well as the Dragon Age games. What do you think of this very first game to break new ground? Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys next time.